got a fun one planned for today. It's pretty unscripted, but I'm going to be breaking down my last kayak fishing tournament, kind of where my mind was, my thought process throughout the day, and my takeaways. Stay tuned and find out here on this episode of That Fishing Podcast.
This is Steve Rogers with Steve Rogers Outdoors, and you're listening to That Fishing Podcast. Sit back and enjoy.
Yo! How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Or if you're new, welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, That Fishing Noob, and yes, I will be breaking down my last kayak fishing tournament. I don't really have notes or a script to kind of go off of. This is going to be sort of just winging it and seeing where this goes and bringing you guys along for the journey. But real quick before that, if you didn't know, I've been hosting free online monthly tournaments. There's no prizes, there's no cost, there's no entry cost or anything like that. It's just a fun way to get out and see the fish that you guys are catching, but also give you more of an excuse to go out and fish. The app that I have been using is called Fish Champ, and directions on getting signed up and joining the tournament are either on my Facebook or YouTube. Facebook, That Fishing Noob, and of course YouTube, That Fishing Noob. It does follow basic CPR etiquette, so catch, photo, release. Bass is going to be oriented from left to right on your bump board, taking a photo overhead. Bass's mouth is closed. Your hand is not going underneath the gill plate, not touching the gills. I'm not really a big stickler on pinching the tail. Like I said, this is just a friendly way of getting out there and fishing. So there's no crazy huge prizes. It's just a fun way to go through and practice kind of that tournament etiquette. In case you're wanting to go fish, a local trail, I think this is a good way to go through and get your feet wet without a whole lot of money to lose. There's not really a whole lot of risk going out there and experimenting. And then if you have any questions, there's been a couple guys that have shot me a message over on Facebook. If you have any questions, just let me know, whether it's having trouble with the app or if you have questions on fish or fish submission, then I'll do my best to answer them. But on to the meat of this, the last tournament I fished. So backstory on this reservoir, it was public way back in the day, but then it shut down, the whole access to it shut down to private only. But recently this group, I think they're housed out of Austin or Dallas, but they have been given access to the reservoir, so they've been using it for fishing tournaments. The last tournament I fished, I did not place high enough to get any money. And in case you're wondering, I have not placed high enough to get any money in any of the tournaments that I fished. I've been fishing tournaments for a little over a year. This is going to be year number 2 going through. After getting my feet wet and my nerves settling, I've heard it, and if you haven't heard it, you'll hear it now. A fishing tournament day is just another day of fishing. So my last tournament, I caught 4 fish and was going and struggling to catch my 5th, my limit. So in the morning, the tournament window was supposed to be from 7 o'clock to 2 o'clock, but there were people out there fishing at 6 o'clock, which is a little bit frustrating. I was talking to a couple of other guys. If you guys are listening to this, you know who you are. We're kind of just frustrated that, people got an early start. We're used to the very traditional tournament where, lines in at 6:30, lines out of the water at 3 o'clock, all photos submitted by 3:45, awards at 4. But all good. The entry cost in this tournament isn't that much at all, so it's not really there's not really a whole lot to lose. But with that, I was unloaded and I launched at about 7:25. So the sun was already up. I missed that morning bite window, or maybe it was tapering off, but I was making a pretty long run over to where I had previously fished. And I know you're not supposed to really go and be a spot fisherman, but it's kind of difficult to venture out and find new spots on a tournament day. So I was like, all right, well, let me go make a run down here and see if I can get them to bite. So by the time I made it over to where I was planning on fishing, and to describe that, if you haven't seen my video, it's a lot of rock and then a very steep drop down into maybe like 20 feet. And the depth over here at this reservoir isn't crazy. It's not like 200 feet deep. I think the deepest is like 37 feet or so. So I like fishing rocks, and I like fishing areas that have drops and ledges like that. And previously, the guy who won the tournament and caught big bass was fishing maybe 40 yards from where I was over there. So I was like, all right, this is a good spot. There should be fish here. So I got there, and before I started fishing the rocks, I saw some reeds and some vegetation. I was throwing topwater at that, throwing underspin, bladed, and just no hits, no action. But I figured, I'll try over here first, see if I can go through and get a reaction strike. It's still early-ish in the morning, so maybe they'd still commit to some topwater. And it wasn't choppy at all yet. The wind was supposed to be picking up later on, but in the morning time it was calm. So I tried, no dice. And then I went over to the spot. And as I was getting to the spot, like there's already 4 boats already on it. And one of them, there are 2 guys fishing like in a John boat. I think a father and his son. The son, who's sitting at the bow, goes through and hooks up on a good fish, like a 3.5, maybe a little bit bigger than that. Good fish. And he's wrestling it. He's like, hey, Dad, get the net, get the net, get the net. Dad's like, all right, cool, come on, son, bring it over this way. He's getting the net ready, and then fish plops off. And then I hear the kiddo, he's just like, yeah! And then I'm pretty sure he like either stomped or like hit his fist down on the boat, because I just heard a big like dunk. So that was confirmation that, hey, there are fish here. I just got to figure out what it is they want to hit. It was actually a really slow time trying to go through and find my first bite. But my mentality of it was, all right, so I need to slow down and fish this thoroughly, because I believe this to be a good spot. People have proven already that there are fish here. I just need to figure out what these fish want to cooperate with, what they want to bite. I know sometimes the fish are pretty temperamental. They don't want to hit something moving. They want to hit something finesse, or maybe they want to hit something that's dead stick. So my top 3, I guess, confidence presentations would be a Texas rig, a drop shot, and then it would be topwater, but these guys weren't cooperating on topwater. So I was throwing a Texas, a drop shot, and a jig over at these rocks and trying to fish it slow, casting up pretty shallow, and then just slowly bouncing it down the rocks, or just pulling it, dragging it down the rocks, and seeing if I can go through and get a bite. There's another gentleman, his name is Luke, who was pretty familiar with that area, and he confirmed too that that spot was a really good spot. And he had mentioned that he had caught, I think, like maybe an 11-pounder or so over at that spot. I don't know what time of year, but again, another little confirmation that this is a good spot. So in my mind, I was like, all right, today's just a day of lots of casts. I don't want to go through and cover water and leave this, because people have caught fish around me. And mind you, this wasn't like every single cast around me was fish, and I was just the one that was like skunking the boat. Every once in a while, someone had pull up a fish, good fish. I was wrestling with, I got to fish this thoroughly. I got to figure out the pattern, figure out what they want to bite, figure out, the presentation, the color. And once I do that, then milk it. So I had been throwing a black and blue with green pumpkin laminate made by my buddy, Jeremy, over at Dadfish Tackle. Quick plug, TFN10, Tom Frank Nord 10, will get you 10% off over at dadfishtackle.com. Also extra incentive to go through and blow him up, because come October 1st, 2025, he is losing his job because the company or the people that were funding his job are not renewing that contract. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess. But he's a man of faith, so he's trusting that God is going to take care of him, provide. And it's funny because he's like, yeah, I'm not even worried. Like, this is pretty chill. But anyways, I was throwing a laminate that he made. He calls it the Papa Crawl. A big old crawl profile. And I had one bass go through and pick that up, and it was almost off of a dead stick. I was throwing it on a Texas rig, made a couple casts, and then on this cast, I was dragging it, and then I stopped to like talk to someone that was next to me, like a kayaker that was next to me, and then I was like, well, my line's moving off. Set the hook, and then that fish, which is maybe a 12-incher, plopped off. Sad, but got a bite. So I was like, okay, cool. Unfortunately, I did not get another bite on that color for another, 20 minutes. So I had bounced back and forth between throwing an imitator, which is like a grub profile. I threw the same color, black and blue with a green pumpkin. I changed it up and threw just black and blue. I threw white and nothing. I tried throwing a bladed jig. It was a white with green, and then the paddle tail that I had on it is like a pearl white with almost like a green shift, a little bit like a green tint. Nothing. Threw my top water some more. Nothing. Threw jigs. I initially was throwing a black and blue with a black and blue trailer. Nothing. Switched over to Okeechobee crawl color. Nothing. I was like, man, I don't know what these guys want to bite. And it's one of those things where you go a long time without a bite and you just question everything. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. Drop shot, nothing, different colors. And then I had the random idea. I was like, for some reason I was like, red. So then I tied on, and I don't even have any more of these, but it's like a fire stick. I don't remember what the color is called, but it's a stealth worm, a little worm profile on a drop shot, and it is red with like red flake. And I think there's a little bit of black flake in it too. So I was like, okay, cool, Backing up a little bit too. So water conditions, the clarity over here is not good at all because it had rained a ton. So the water level was up and visibility was maybe a solid 5 inches. So yeah, it was pretty tough fishing conditions, but also kind of normal for this area that I fish, for the area that I am in Texas. Like, we do not have clear water anywhere. So then when it rains, everything turns into a cloudy, muddy, yucky mess of can't see anything. But for some reason, I was like, red. All right, cool. So I tie on this little stealth worm on my drop shot, make a cast, and then I get hit. And I'm like, what? First fish, good to go, landed, and on the board. I was like, okay, cool. Well, I guess I'm just going through and throwing just this color out. For whatever reason, they want this color. Cool. So the first thing, go through and catch a fish, and you have yourself a fluke. Next thing is trying to get another fish, because then you have a coincidence. And then if you find another fish, then you have a pattern. So I was looking for my coincidence, and I did not get hit on the drop shot for a while. So I went back to throwing the Texas rig. I was just flip-flopping between Texas rig and drop shot, making same cast, kind of floating up and down this. It's maybe a 50-yard stretch, maybe not even that, 30-yard stretch, 40-yard stretch of rock and very steep drop. There was also some timber, but these guys were like spot locked on it and just staying there. So I'm sure they were there for a good reason, but I couldn't go through and encroach on that. They had that. Throwing out of Texas again, and then I get hit, and I feel that tap, tap, tap. And I'm like, all right, cool. Wait a sec, sit into it, gone, nothing. And I was like, oh man, good bite. And that happened a couple other times as well, where I was like waiting, and then I feel like a tap, and then there's a little bit of weight set into it, and it's like, oh man, like, where did you go? Why didn't you eat it? And I thought I was waiting. I thought I was, fishing slow enough to where that fish would go through and position it or keep it closer into its mouth, that I would be able to get a good hook set, or hook penetration, but I don't know. I think there were a couple guys around me too fishing for crappie, and there's some others that were fishing for some other fish too. So I don't know if there was just a little other fish that was pecking at it, but I had some swings and some misses. And then after some time had passed, I was like, all right, you know what? Like, I'm just going to make another cast here, and if I don't get hit, I'm leaving. I'm going to cover water, because I'm not going to stay here the whole day and hope for fish if they're not cooperating. And I think at this point it had been like 40 minutes, 45 minutes without a bite. So as I was rounding the bend where there's a slight transition between rocks and more of like a flat and rocks and a steep drop, I made a cast as close to the bank as I could, close to the rocks as I could, with my drop shot. And I'm like, all right, I just, last cast over here. If I don't get hit, then bye. And I was working this drop shot really slow because mentally I'm like, all right, this is my last cast right here, so let me make sure it's a good last cast. So I worked this drop shot for maybe like a minute or so, and then, yep, you guessed it, fish. Feel that weight, that tick set into it, and I'm like, oh, I got a good fish. It's hooked. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I gotta just talk to the fish and say, well, I'm gonna leave if you don't bite, because obviously no fish are biting here. So I go through, get that fish in, get him on the board, measure it, and this is not a significant fish. I think it's 12.5 inches or so, but another fish, and on the same color, same presentation. So I'm like, all right, we got a coincidence. Maybe they like the red and they like a drop shot. Maybe they're suspended a little bit. Fast forward, I fish the same area with the same presentation, with the same color for a while and don't get hit again. So I'm checking the time. I'm like, all right, I got, 2.5 hours left of fishing here. I can either grind it out here or I can move. And at this point too, like, I am the only kayaker here. There's another kayaker, VIII, if you're listening. VIII was down fishing points like pretty far away, but I can see at this point I saw just another boat. And like, I'm the only one there. It's just me. Everyone else has moved on. So mentally, I'm like, all right, like, am I staying here for no reason? Have the fish all moved on? And it was hot. The high of this day was, I think, 94. The wind had picked up a little bit, had been coming in and out, but I mean, it was hot. The sun was out. It's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. My confidence had tanked. It was just like, I'm about to cover water. So I moved over to the submerged timber. I was throwing over there, didn't get hit. I tried everything again. So I tried throwing out drop shot, nothing. Texas, nothing. Jig, nothing. Tried throwing out bladed, moving it really slow, like fishing it pretty close to the bottom and kind of just like yo-yoing it almost. Nothing. Threw out underspin too, nothing. Then I caught up with VIII, and he's like, yeah, I've caught some fish, and they've all been on points. The name of the game today has been points. So I'm like, all right, man. Like, we caught it for a little bit. Good luck. Hope you catch them. You too. And I went off to cover water. At this point, I was throwing shallow and just seeing if I can get any kind of reaction strike. So I was fishing a bladed, kind of just covering water, and was not getting hit. So then on my electronics, I pull up my map and I see this area that I don't know if it's the discharge or the inlet, but steep drop, access to deeper water, in a very short span of distance. So I was like, all right, I'm going to make a run here. It's going to be a, 25-minute run, but we'll see what happens when we get there. And to my surprise, as I'm rolling up, I see a ton of vegetation. So I'm like, no way. Does this vegetation line this steep drop all the way down? And there was only one other person fishing it. So I was like, man, is this a good spot? Because if it was a good spot, shouldn't there be more people other than just this one person? I rolled up to the spot and get on my Texas rig. Now at this point, I have an electric plumb Papa Crawl tied on. So I figured I'll stick with that red color. Maybe they like it. Maybe they can just see red better in this dingy, murky water. I don't know. One cast, I was like, all right, no, nothing. Second cast, all right, no, nothing. I think it was like third cast-ish. I was going through casting just on the edge of that vegetation, letting it fall down, because if I'm fishing a Texas rig, like, it's a bottom contact presentation, so I need to go through and make sure it stays on bottom. Kind of like a drop shot. It's a suspended presentation, but my weight should be on the bottom, unless I'm trying to like dangle it at a specific depth. But when a Texas rig made a cast up close to the vegetation, right on the edge, let it drop, gave it one quick little pop, and then I felt it. That's a fish. Set into it. Oh my goodness, that is a fish. All right. Of course, life, rejuvenation of all of the things. Like, I've got breath in my lungs again. And I'm like, all right, here we go. I got a bite, got a fish. It's confirmed. This is a good spot. Let it be a good spot. This is a good spot. Go through and get that fish, get him in, get him on the board, measure it. I'm like, all right, here we go. And I think that fish was maybe 16.5. So I was like, okay, they're here. I don't know why, but they're here and they like it. So I spent the remainder of my day, this was maybe 1.5 hours, going through and just floating up and down this vegetation. And this is a large stretch. It's like 70 yards of vegetation that's on this steep drop. And I went through and pulled out another one. And same thing, I was just like, oh man, like this is good. But at the same time, I was kind of worried. I was like, man, did I find this spot too late? Did I get here too late to be able to go through and put together enough fish to ideally rank high enough to take home money? At the beginning of the day, I was like, 85 inches. If I get 85, I will be in it for the money. So that was the big number that I was going for, 85 inches. So by my third fish, I was like, all right, here we go. Come on. And at this point, it was just how many accurate casts can I make? And like, it's, juggling that I need to be patient with this accurate cast. If I feel like I made an accurate cast, I need to work this well. Not make an accurate cast and then like just burn it back and give up on it. But then also like if I made an accurate cast, not working it too much, because if there's no fish around, then I'm just working a, soft plastic presentation for nothing. Because it's not like fish are coming from, 15 feet away to go through and bite this in this water. At least I don't think. The bites that I've been having, the bites I have been getting, except for that drop shot, have been on the fall. Like in this vegetation where I'm fishing at now, my bites have been within maybe a foot to 2 foot window of where I'm initially casting. So that's where I'm like, all right, this is what I'm doing. This is the pattern that I'm going to try to fish. It had been working. I had some more bites, some swings and misses. I think there was 2 of them. One of them I was like, all right, like a little peck, but then I was a little impatient, so I felt the peck, but then I set into it really quick instead of waiting. So didn't get a hook in that one. And then just kept on going through cast, grinding it out. And then I was like, all right, I got like 30 minutes left. Because in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, so awards is supposed to be at 2 o'clock. I need to make it there by 2 o'clock. Otherwise, I can't submit my fish. I'm going to be DQ'd, all that stuff. So I've got like 30 minutes left, and I hook onto another fish. And I'm like, oh, man, yes, thank you. I was like, thank you, God. Thank you for this fish. Went through, got on the board. I think this one was maybe like 14 inches or so. And still throwing the same electric plum papa crawl on a Texas rig with a 3/16 ounce weight. So, boom, going through, just cast, float up, and cast while just drifting back down. Go through and pedal my way back up to the top of it, make casts, drifting back down. Maybe like 15 minutes left, I hook onto another fish, and this would have been my 5th. I would have had a limit. But unfortunately, this fish plopped off like right at the kayak. I went through and I tried to turn him around to position him to get netted, and nope. Texas rig just came right out, and I was like, no, I missed him. Dang it. At this point, I was like, you know what? I'm not close to 85. I think I'm sitting at like 50-ish, mid 50s. I was like, I'm not in it for the money. But still kept trying to go through, made cast. But reality kind of set in. I was like, man, I think I found this spot too late. And I think that those that have bigger bags all got their bags way early. Let's say if they launched at maybe 5:40 and they were fishing by 6 at their spot, like that 6 to 7 window when that sun is still down or just barely coming up is such a magical window. And it's like, I missed it because the tournament's supposed to start at 7. So time is clicking down. 10 minutes left, 8 minutes left, 6 minutes left, 5 minutes left, 4, 3, 2, and I'm here casting. And I was like, all right, got one time. I was like, all right, I got time for one more cast. Made that one cast. I was like, and nothing. It's funny because in my video, I was doing like that heartbeat, and then I'm pretty sure I dubbed that into whatever. At that point, my brain was fried. I was tired. Ugh, it was just, I was like, all right, I'm tired and I want to rest and get out of the sun. But overall, it was a good fishing trip. My second time out there on that body of water, it was really nice to not skunk. I mean, my first, I don't know how many fishing tournaments ever was like one fish or a skunk. So it was nice to go through and put together fish. Overall, I had 4 fish landed, I had 2 come off, and I had 4 missed fish, where I had a bite and maybe I went and got a hook into them temporarily or very briefly, but then just nothing. But the really cool thing about fishing that place with that trail is interacting with you guys that are familiar with my YouTube channel. It's it's funny because there's a guy, Mike, who had parked next to me, and I mean, I have a Jeep, Mike had a Jeep, so, you know, just in passing, as I was finishing loading up my kayak, I was like, hey man, nice Jeep, and he's like, wait a minute, I was like, do I know you? And I was like, I don't think so. And he's like, hold on, no, do you do YouTube? Because at this point I had a camera in my head too. I was like, yeah, and he's like, oh, I know you. And he's like, man, what's your channel name? Man, I don't know your channel name. And then, see, this is how I know people know. Because then he started mentioning like videos that I've done. He's like, yeah, like you were talking to that one guy that was saying that you're on private property across from his property. And then you were going out and fishing at this location with the lily pads. And then you were going through and talking to these people when you're on this lake. And I was like, oh, Mike knows. Mike's not just some random. And then he found out, he's like, yeah, man, you're that fishing dude. And I was like, yeah, dude, nice to meet you, Mike. So there was a couple interactions like that. I met Mike. I met the guys that Mike was fishing with. Roy, Justin, met up with Ferdy. I met up with another guy that was out on the water. That same thing. He's like, man, you do YouTube? I was like, you try to. And he's like, yeah. It's really cool interacting with you guys. And it's funny. Like, it's still funny when it's like, you that fishing noob? I'm like, yeah, what's up? So it's cool interacting with you guys. It's cool just meeting up with you guys and being able to talk fishing and kind of seeing like, what was the pattern for you? How did you do? And what were things that, you know, were successful with you? Or just answering just random questions if you have them. So the interaction is really cool. And I'm thankful for that. Because I remember the first time that it happened, I was just like, someone picked me out from YouTube. This is weird. I think I'm getting better with fishing tournaments and kind of just breaking down bodies of water. I need to be able to balance like, all right, cool. So, because I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you listen to many other podcasts. And on Tackle Talk, I remember hearing that, you know, the goal for finding these fish is finding cooperative fish. You can go through and grind out an 8-hour day in a section and find, you know, 4 fish, 3 fish, 5 fish, but you really have to work for those fish. Or you cover water and you find the cooperative fish, the fish that are willing to go through and just hit something because they're mad, they're angry, they're hungry. There's a lot, and it's not the same every single time. Fishing is complicated, or it can be. On fun fishing days where there's not really a whole lot to lose except for time, sure, the stakes aren't as high. But for me, like the competitor in me, I want to be able to come away with some money in a fishing tournament. And it's like half of it is, you know, a toss-up on finding the cooperative fish, and the other half is like putting together the pattern, putting together the things that I have learned and the pieces and tidbits of information to go through and put together a bite. And that is complicated and super duper difficult. Well, that's pretty much all I had for the agenda today. I didn't really have anything else on my mind to go through and really talk about. A couple little random things. So this is episode 8, I believe. Planning on having Jeremy and Chase on the podcast again because that'd be fun. But this whole podcast thing has still been a fun experience. It's kind of fun to go through and be able to talk and break things down and kind of have a different media or a different vehicle of engagement with you guys. So appreciate you for stopping by and listening. If you haven't already, please go through and rate the show. That would help it populate and kind of boost it up. And then, shoot me an email, thatfishingnoob@gmail.com if you guys want to hear a specific topic or if you have any questions. I'm still trying to figure out my voice for this podcast because I'm not an Andrew Hayes and I'm not a marine biologist. I'm not anyone that is crazy, that has a ton of wisdom and experience. And I think that's kind of how I started my podcast. I was like, all right, I'm going to go through and try to do an information dump and a presentation dump. But it's been a fun journey so far. Got to give a huge shout out to Steve Rogers. He was gracious enough before I even had episode 1 to shoot that introduction. So that's really nice. I got stuff linked down beneath in the description, including information to Steve Rogers' website, his channel, my buddy Jeremy over at The Dadfish with dadfishtackle.com, and I also have some affiliate links over at Kistler and Eco Fishing. These affiliate links are no extra cost to you, but I will make a small commission based off your purchase. It's a way of showing not only my podcast, but also my YouTube, or just me in general, some additional support. And I'd appreciate if you consider using them. Thanks. But looks like that'll be it for this podcast. I appreciate you guys. I hope that you are able to go fishing. And if you are fishing, I hope you're able to catch a big one. But I'll catch you on the next one. Tight lines. God bless.